Good morning. You're supposed to say good day. Just so you know, it's been a little bit of a disappointment. As I walk in the morning and you see someone and they say good morning, and it just feels like I'm in the United States. I like to feel like I'm traveling, but it's so good to be with you this morning. And I appreciate you being flexible on how we do Sabbath school this morning. So for this short time that we have together, I want you to experience a little bit of what I do as I visit with students. And I've had the privilege of being in the schools in Melbourne. I've had a chance to go out to Mildura. We've been in the Sydney area, Avondale, Tweed Valley yesterday or 2 days ago. And so I've had a chance of wandering around and speaking to a lot of kids. And sometimes parents would rather hear a kid talk than a parent talk. And so this morning for Sabbath school, we're going to have a little bit of fun understanding how our brains get tricked really easy. And then for church, we're going to really discover some of the ways of how do we deal with these struggles in a way that really lets God's kingdom come into our lives. And so I'm going to ask you some questions, and I really want you to participate. It's kind of important that you participate. And so for this first thing, Mary's mom had 4 kids. Their names are April, May, June, and do you know the last child's name? I'll say it again. Mary's mom has 4 kids, April, May, June, and Mary. It's really confusing, isn't it? Because our brains love patterns. Our brains love to be lazy. They like to rush to conclusions. They like to predict things, and they don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about it. And so this case, as soon as you see April, May, June, our brain jumps to July. We like to see patterns quickly. I could say 1, 2, 1. What do you think the next one's going to be? It's random, but it could be 2. But our brain just likes to think of that, and it feels at ease when there's predictability. And so when you look at how our brains think about things, how technology uses our brain, part of it is that it just wants us to feel good. It wants us to feel safe. And when things are predictable, it feels safe. And when you pick up an application or a game or a computer or a tablet, it's a highly predictable environment. Unlike the real world. The world that we're living in right now is highly unpredictable. I mean, 2 years ago in 2019, as we came into 2020, you remember people talking about 2020, the year of vision, you know, the year of seeing things clearly, and before you knew it, whack, something hit us called COVID. We didn't see it coming, which is really ironic, isn't it? The year of vision where we miss it. And next thing you know, there's toilet paper shortages in the United States. We had this thing called murder hornets that came to our area. Does that sound scary? Well, you're Australian. You're surrounded by murder hornets or something similar. But for us, that was a terrifying thing to think that there's these big wasps out to get us. So we hate unpredictable, but we live in an unpredictable world, and our brains crave the predictable. Another one that I just want to ask you, look at this bus. Tell me which way is the front of the bus. Can you tell? What's interesting about this is that you look at it and you look at the wheels, you look at all sorts of things, and you look for clues. But the clue that I want to give you is how do you get onto a bus? The door. Do you see a door? So the door's on the other side, right? And you're saying, American, I've designed this for you. So the door's on the other side. Is the door by the driver? So that would be the front. Okay, I had to change the slide because of your country, all that work that I had to put into it. But here's the weird thing is that as you look at that, we concentrate on what we see, and most of the time we lose curiosity about what's going on behind the scenes. You can look at social media, you can spend time navigating an application without thinking, what is it that I'm not seeing? What's the story that's not being told? We buy into concepts, we buy into advertising, we buy into things without that curiosity saying, hey, something doesn't fit, something's missing here. This is your participation time. If I was dealing with really immature children, they yell out wrong maths answers. For you, you say maths, is that correct? In the United States, we say math. Okay, so I need you to be accurate with me, and I need you to be bold. I'm not going to trick you at all. You just need to shout out the answer. So when I say, what's 1 plus 1, you say, what is 2 plus 2? What is 3 plus 3? What is 4 plus 4? I need you to name a vegetable. You got it right? Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. How did I know that? How many of you else said carrot? Someone said it really loud, which I appreciate. What I find interesting is that this happens with adults, it happens with kids. For some reason, when we do math together, and then I say shout out a vegetable, you hear carrot. It's been really fun with the biggest school assemblies, it's a loud carrot. And then once in a while, someone will randomly shout out a fruit name, which makes no sense. Apple! Because human beings are strange, but there's a weird thing about it is for some reason this exercise, predictably, 80-some% of the time, people will shout carrot. Here's what bothers most of us as human beings is that we think we're very rational. We think that everything we do is a decision, that we do it on purposefulness, that we know what we're doing and why we're doing it. But the reality is that human beings are predictably irrational. We pay for things based on the color of the packaging. We're suckers for things that are sold in bulk. Idea of scarcity makes us do crazy things. So if there's something that's almost sold out, we're going to try to buy it. If you've ever been on Amazon shopping and you know you want to buy something but you're not really sure and then it says only 5 left, what do? I better buy it now. If you put a countdown timer on an online purchase, people will buy faster than if the countdown timer wasn't there because human beings are irrational. You could have stores full of these items, but for some reason when we have the idea of scarcity, we're like, I need to do it now. I need to buy it now. And so there's a craziness that happens with us. Here's what's interesting is that our rationality actually takes a deep dive the later into night we get. The darker it gets, the more tired we get, the more irrational we get, but we don't quite realize it. This is why late night television, when they sell people stuff online, not on television with these infomercials, those are really profitable because people think they're being smart when they're purchasing these items. The next day you're like, what did I just buy? I don't need that, but it seemed like such a good choice at the time. Okay, this is kind of an interesting illusion. If you look at these 2 orange dots, bigger or smaller? Which one is bigger? Which one's smaller? Okay, there's the same size. Do they look like the same size? So when you look at it together, you say, okay, they're the same, but the perception is that they're different, right? For me, the one that looks with the big circles around it makes it look much smaller. The space around it makes it look much smaller. We're really not that good at comparison. As human being brains, we can look at ourselves and then we look at someone else, and we're both God's children, but what do we see? That person's talented, I'm not. That person's beautiful, I'm not. That person has a purpose for their life and I don't. And we tend to measure incorrectly. The other thing that I find interesting as I talk about generations is that our perception of beauty changes. And so in America, there was a famous actress, Marilyn Monroe. Do you remember seeing Marilyn? Do you think that Marilyn would be considered, especially body shape-wise, beautiful now? Probably not. She'd be considered big-boned and maybe a little too chubby now. But back then, what? She was the epitome of female beauty. That changes over time. And what's rough about that is it could even change in a generation, is that what's beautiful keeps shifting. It keeps shifting. And so for kids, adults, all of us that are chasing beauty and comparison, we're wrong about it so much of the time. What I struggle is that majority of the teens I work with believe that they're ugly. Believe that something about them needs to change, have a really hard time looking in the mirror and appreciating themselves. Every picture's horrible. And we try to convince them that they're beautiful. What's kind of interesting, have you ever tried to take a picture of the moon at night when it's just shining and it's large and it's beautiful? Have you ever tried to take a picture, pull out your phone, you take a picture of the moon, and then you look at it on your phone, what do you see? Your phone isn't that good at capturing amazing beauty. You'll say, it looked way better in real life, and that's what you'll tell people. And then when you look at a picture at yourself, you're like, I'm so ugly, when the reality is your phone isn't that good at capturing true beauty. But we forget that. Okay, I'm going to show you 2 lines. I need you to tell me whether these lines are the same length or different lengths. Yeah, the bottom one's quite a bit shorter. Thank you. Some of you thought I was doing the same trick I did a minute ago, right? And maybe you were tricked last time, so you're like, they're the same. Kevin likes it when I say same. That's how you guys shout it out to me. There's times that I've had people, especially teens, just don't like to be tricked. And so when I say there's two lines, immediately they look at me. They don't look at the screen, they look at me, and they cross their arms, and it's like, okay, American. They're the same, because they're so frustrated about being tricked. And so they don't use their senses to investigate. Once we get a thought in our brain, we're so convinced we're right that we don't look for any evidence that it's wrong. I work with teens that are convinced that marijuana's the wonder drug, that it'll cure all sorts of their problems. And so when they go on the internet to find out evidence for marijuana, what do they find? Study after study about crazy things like snails that became happy because they had marijuana. I'm just making that up just so you know. I don't know about snails. But they'll say the snail came out of its shell because of marijuana. Well, that's not good either. But the snail's really happy, and so if that snail's really happy doing marijuana, then I should do marijuana, because then what will I be? A happy snail, right? They look at all these obscure studies and change their behavior based on those, but if you give them evidence that it hurts the frontal lobe development for teens, that it causes some issues with anxiety and depression, that it will actually make them have lowered ambition, that it hurts their test scores, their school performance, relationships. If you show them study after study that shows that, what do? They just go to the snail. They don't take in any more evidence. And I think that's even a struggle for us as adults, is once we get our minds made up, we get really closed. We don't keep asking questions. If you look at the youngest kids in the room right now, they're really good at asking an important question. Why? Why is that? Curiosity. How does that work? Those sorts of questions. By the time a student reaches senior high, what they started doing, about 70, 80 questions a day, is down to maybe a handful of questions. For most of us adults, by the time we're adults, we've quit asking why. We've lost our curiosity. And to me, that ability to continue to be curious is one of the most important things we can do. Why is it that I feel this way when I use this application? Why is it that I'm drawn to these sorts of games? Why is it that I spend time doing this, but I really don't want to spend time doing that? For us as Christians, why is it that I can remember every single random pop song and movie line from when I was a child, but I can't remember scripture? Just me? I don't know, maybe. But that's a struggle, isn't it? Why? And so the curiosity is a real important thing. I really, your image might not capture, but how many of you see a light blue circle? You see a light blue circle? Is that light blue circle there? It's actually not. What you see is, you see the big four circles, those with the lighter blue on them. Because of how that's been drawn, your eyes actually add color. It's called the neon effect. You add color into that. You see something that's not there, that's not even drawn there, that you want to be there. Your brain craves completeness, and it'll add stuff that's not even there. Trust me, it's not there, but you see it. How many of you see these little black dots flashing around? Do those dots exist? So you see things that don't exist? That's a problem, right? It's interesting that your brain can be fooled, your physical senses can be fooled. How is it that these dots, just when you flash your eyes around, that these dots appear and disappear? Because our brain isn't as smart as we think. Our senses aren't as smart as we think. We can view something and reach a conclusion that's incorrect all the time. You can look at someone and say they look happy when in the reality they aren't. We can see all this stuff that's not true. Our brain is fooled really easily. I'm going to give you this big important point that we say is if our brain is fooled by easy stuff like pictures, doing math together, what about the tough stuff like relationships? The interpersonal stuff, the questions about God, the questions about my purpose in life, my questions about who am I supposed to be and how am I supposed to relate to the people around me? What am I supposed to do with my entertainment? All those are really hard questions, and I have to tell you that most of us need to start realizing that I can be tricked. I can be tricked. For adults here, you can spend your lifetime pursuing things that will vanish in an instant. There's celebrities that thought if they could get famous, if they could get rich, if they could do all these things, then they'll be what? Happy. And what do they discover? No, depression, anxiety, fear. A life of loneliness, even when they've achieved it all. And so part of the thing that I just challenge kids with and adults is, what would it be like if we start thinking deeper? With our teens, this is my recommendation, is that I want teens to be able to turn off their device, turn off the application, be able to own that off switch. For most of us as parents, we turn it on and we turn it off for them. We tell them when they can use it, when they have to stop using it. We're in charge of the device, but they need to be. They need to be. So how do we raise teens that can play a video game when it's fun, but realize that they can turn it off and go do something else? How do we help people that will be on social media and be able to interpret what's going on and to be able to set their phone down and start focusing on other things when they need to? How do we help kids so that even though they're riding on a bus and a friend shows them a picture on a phone, that they know what to do at that moment, how they have to turn it off themselves, leave that conversation? That's a much harder job than just saying no phones, no computers, no whatever, because the reality is we need to raise kids that can turn it off. And at the same time, for us as parents, how many of us have spent way too many hours on YouTube? Way too hours on Netflix, watching series after series. It's really easy to be hooked on this stuff. And so as a generation, as adults and kids, we have to learn how to own that off switch. I'm personally fooled, and my guess is you are too. One of the stats that we share about teens is that about 73% or 72% of teens, this is from Common Sense Media, say that when they're online, they're being manipulated to be online more. Manipulation feels really gross, doesn't it? I had two older brothers, and for me, the worst thing would be is if this girl is wanting to be my friend just because they want to date my brother. You know that feeling where you're being used? What's the purpose of social media? Why does social media exist? Is it for the benefit of the user? It's for the benefit of the advertiser. Does that make sense? And so when they're showing you things, when they're asking you to have a reaction, when they're getting your eyeball and brain time, it's not for your benefit, it's for their benefit, for selling things. And so this is a quote that came from The Guardian. It was a leaked marketing promotion for Facebook, which is now Meta. It says the company Facebook can monitor posts and photos in real time to determine when young people feel stressed, defeated, overwhelmed, anxious, nervous, stupid, silly, useless, and a failure. When your young person comes home from school and you say, hey, how was your day? What do they tell you? Good, fine, grunt. I'm hungry. Quit asking me questions. You don't get a whole lot in real time. We can't even really tell what our kids are feeling. If you look around church right now, you probably can't tell in real time what people are feeling. But when you're on social media, the way you're posting, the way you're following, the things that you're liking, the pace that you're using, the application tells them a great deal about what's going on inside your brain. And what we find out is that there's special versions of you that makes poor choices. It's easier to sell weight training equipment to boys that feel weak. Example, if you've got a car you love, are you in the market to buy a new one? No. If you've got a house you love, are you in the market to buy a new house? No. But if you have a body you hate, are you in the market for the next better body? For girls, if you're in skin that you don't like, are you in the market for skin products? For clothes, they can sell you stuff when you feel bad. The other thing is that some of us make ridiculous choices when we're really positive, when we're in this frantic phase, because it's like, oh, who's going to pay for that? The future will pay for that. We make all sorts of commitments, and we make all sorts of impulsive things. Facebook knows how you're most profitable, and they can put you there. They can put you there. Instagram can put you there. The apps can put you there because that's how they make money. And so I'm not saying not to use these products, but I'm saying when you use these products, keep in mind that how are they using you? How are they using you? The point that I'd like you to think about this morning as we spend the end of this time together is this idea from Romans 12:2. It says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Did you catch that? First, there's a pattern of this world. There's a pattern of this world. And it's a pattern of this world, if you think about it, a pattern's pretty simple. If you make ice in this ice cube tray, what shape is going to come out? Cubes are going to come out, right? Every single time you make ice in this tray, it's going to come out in the same shape, right? Would you be mad saying it was supposed to be rainbow shape or it was supposed to be stars? No, you'd say, okay, I use that pattern, it makes sense. The pattern of this world is that if it feels good, do it. If it hurts, stop doing it. The pattern of this world is to use people for your gain, not to care for people. The pattern of this world is broken relationships, and the results are always the same. And so when this thing says, don't follow the pattern of this world, God's saying the pattern of this world leads to brokenness, it leads to poor self, it leads to shattering. And so instead, there's a new pattern. The pattern of this world says anger toward others. When you're mad, when you're scared, all those things, anger flies out. What I say is that a lot of times anger flies in also. The things you say to yourself are horrible. When you make a mistake, what do you say? When you feel awkward, what do you say to yourself? The other thing that we see is that our brain gets really, really busy. This is an American animal. It's not dangerous, but they're not that smart when they cross the road. They're little chipmunks. So imagine this is the road, and the chipmunk's going over to go eat something, and it's almost across, and a car comes, and it's like, oh no, a car! And what does it do at that point? It's almost safe. Instead, it turns around and it's like, I'm going to go that way. And it starts running across the road and it's almost to safety. And it's like, oh, wait, I was over there. And it goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until this is Sabbath. So the car goes right over its head and it screams. Okay. The car goes over. If it had just picked a side, what would have happened? It would have been safe, but you get busy, you get frantic. Most of us relate to the idea that you've got a big paper due, you've got a big project due, and so you sit down at your computer to do that, and instead of working on the project, you organize your desk. Anyone do that? You take care of all your emails, you arrange your desktop, you organize your binders, but you don't do the productive stuff. That's really a human response. Video games are probably the biggest driver of feeling busy without accomplishing stuff. You can lose 2 hours, 3 hours of time without even thinking about stuff. The distraction is huge, and you feel like you're doing something, but you're actually not contributing anything. And then we have things called deer. Deer, I think you have deer. They're kind of like not that cool kangaroos. And so when they're scared, deer just freeze. They freeze. And I think we can relate to that idea of having a test due, and you're working on the test, and you have that answer, you just can't think of what it is. And as soon as the time's up and you set it on the teacher's desk and you start walking away, what happens? Whoosh. That idea comes to you. When we freeze, our brain just can't think of things at times. And so fight, flight, freeze, those are real common things, or that idea that we're just chasing after pleasure. I want that, and pleasure and joy or happiness feel like they're just out of touch. If I could just buy that, if I could do that, if these people would, if I married this person or dated, we're constantly chasing after that. And this pattern doesn't work. But here's the thing, if you're in that pattern of ice cubes, how do you get to a new shape? If I tried to smash you into the new shape, what would happen? There'd be loss, there'd be brokenness. And instead, it's this idea of melting, being put into the form and refreezing. Does that take time? Most of us are impatient when it comes to character development, discipleship, change. And what we have to say is to break this world's pattern, it's going to take time. And it's going to take God doing a great work. There's a couple verses I just want to share with you. Ezekiel 11 says, I will give them an undivided heart. That means a new heart, and the heart and mind in the Bible are interesting how they represent them. I'll put a new spirit in them. I will remove from them their hearts of stone and give them a heart of flesh, a heart that can be molded. I'm going to skip these just because of time, but this verse right here says, perfect love drives out fear. Perfect love drives out fear. Have you been driving down the road and there's a wasp in your car or some sort of bug that's going to eat you alive? Anyone? What do you do at that point? All the windows come down and you push out that bug. You try to cast it out of your car. For most of us, we're living at a time of fear, uncertainty. We're doing the best we can, and a lot of times that fear is driving negative behaviors. We're using technology, we're using relationships, we're using these things to make us feel better, and it just won't work. And so a lot of times we focus on, hey, let's stop playing the video game, let's stop playing this. If fear is making you play the video game, let's get rid of the fuel that's driving the negative behaviors. And for me, that's fear. That's fear. So how do you get rid of fear? Perfect love, what? Casts out fear. And when you look at the Great Commission, it says, love God, what? With all your heart, mind, soul. So this connection to God, love God. And then the other one is what? Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor. Love. And we're saying love. That sounds really kind of romantic or some sort of song. No, I'm saying really simple acts of love, especially acts of love done in secret. Doing some act of kindness. Caring for someone else. Letting someone go in front of you. Picking up a piece of trash. Doing a task that no one's asked you to do. Being the servant. Why does God want us to do that? Because it drives out fear, and our brains think better when we're not afraid. When we're not afraid. I'm not sure where you are this morning as far as your challenges with technology, but my guess is that you're challenged by fear. My guess is that you're challenged by thoughts that race, anxieties, different things that are going on. During the second service, we're going to talk about some of these big obstacles that we face, these giants, these thick walls. But the reminder as we go into that time is really the power that God calls us to, a simple thing called love, that we can commit ourselves fully to. And so I don't know where you are this morning, but I just invite you as we continue to worship God this morning, find opportunities to do the loving thing, the loving thing. That's the solution. That's God's solution for us. Let me pray for you, and then we'll continue with our Sabbath school time. Father, we just thank you for this morning, for this time that we have together, for this beautiful day. Just the privilege that we get to study your word. And Father, thank you for not just leaving us abandoned, that you can transform our minds. That this pattern of this world's broken, but you can give us something that's so much better. The pattern of care, the pattern of loving you fully, the pattern of letting you change our hearts.